Greetings, students. We are going to cover week 4, and we're looking at the role of the family in its effect on adolescent delinquent behavior. But we're also looking at adolescent behavior overall, and so we have the PowerPoint from McWhirter, which is your chapter 4, and then we have the PowerPoint from Arnett, which is chapter 7. And I'm not going to cover everything, but there are a few aspects of both of these PowerPoints that I think are really important that I hope will help your reading. And some of it is redundant. If you ask me which one should you read, I say McWhirter is your primary text, but Arnett has some really great talking points and reading points as well with stats. So I'm going to go over really quick. You read in chapter 1 of McWhirter about the ecological perspective when working with families and adolescents. And you know the microsystem right here has to do with the individual and their immediate family. The exosystem, which is really about that part of a system that indirectly impacts this adolescent. For instance, the age for curfew age in Dallas for young people is 11 p.m. So that's a law that was made that impacts adolescents, but nobody called my kids to ask them, or call your children to ask about what was an acceptable age for the curfew, or what was the acceptable time for curfew. So that's what the exosystem, those are laws and rules and policies that are in place that we didn't have a direct influence on, but those policies and rules influence us. You know, the macro system, which is the society at large, the mesosystem being those entities that interact with the individual and the family. That could be school, that could be church, that could be the community center, the health clinic. And then chronosystem are those influences over time, such as family traditions, generational behaviors, or generational patterns of viewing life. That's how the ecological perspective is used to explain influences on a young person's life from several different systems. And then, of course, we know that the family system, in order to understand how a family functions, you have to look at it as a system. That is, individuals who make up one whole unit. And sometimes we know as time goes by, those units have started to look very, very different. I love a point that was made in McWhirter's text that indicates it's not the structure of the family, but it is the level of relationships within the family. Are those families whole? Are they balanced? In this term, we talk about equilibrium and disequilibrium. Systems that work well have found a way to balance out in how they interact. Okay? So those are terms I really want you to think about. McWhirter really focuses on a pathological perspective, and that is what is going wrong in families that make it difficult for adolescents to succeed. We know about lack of social support or minimal social support, those families that don't have some type of support system, whether that's extended family or friends or relationships. We know that most families that are in financial pressure, that are living in poverty, those families are under an extreme amount of stress, and therefore the adolescents are impacted negatively. And then those social norms, or those social constructs, if you will, such as racism and discrimination, such as judgment and those types of things over whether sexual orientation or race or gender or whatever that is, those become hindrances to a family's ability to function well. And if the parents can't function, then the young person, the student, really does struggle with their ability to be able to navigate life well. You know, Arnett talks about the impact of parents on their children, and parents who are going through what we call midlife crises. So if children are in their adolescent years, more than likely their parents are in their 40s, early 50s. And I've highlighted here in this PowerPoint some of the challenges that come along with midlife crisis. Men get older, women get older. Women still have employability status, a greater employability status as they get older than men do, and particularly for men and women of color. These issues become really great stressors, and the more stress on the family unit, the less available parents are to nurture, to provide discipline and correction for their children. So those are things I want you to think about. I want to move really quickly to a diagram that is most important. And when you read and when you look at the case study on the Carter family in McWhorter, I want you to consider this interaction of demandedness and responsiveness. And this is as it relates to parents' availability and interactions with their children. I want you to look up these terms: authoritarian, authoritative, disengage, and permissive. These two terms often get confused, authoritarian versus authoritative. I want you to decide which one is so rigid that the rule is my way or the highway. This is my house. If you don't like the rules, get out. Which one of these are like, these are the rules. I have told you my expectations. There are consequences to your actions. Nonetheless, I love you and I will always support you. Which one of these four are the two in disengaged and permissive? And I want you to select which one says, you know what, do whatever you want to do. I really don't care. I don't care when you come in. I don't care when you go. I just want you to make sure you don't do anything that gets me in trouble. I don't want to have to pay any fees for your delinquency. Or which one is this one? You know what? I have so much going on in my world. I don't have time for you. I have to pay attention to your little sister's needs, your little brother's needs. I have to pay attention to your father's needs or your mother's needs. I don't have time to answer and to deal with your little questions as they relate to your friends and your peers. I need you to get your life together. You are so-and-so. You're a teenager. You are growing into an adult. I need you to start acting like an adult. Or, you know what? I'm just not available. Of those four, what we know is a combination of these four responses help shape a parent-child interactions. So I have a real hard time for those parents to say, I don't know why my child behaves the way they do. Maybe a parent doesn't recognize the impact that their behavior and their level of connectedness or level of absence plays on their child's adolescent behavior, delinquent, overt or covert behavior. McWhorter highlights in slide 8 what makes a strong family. We know that a strong family survives. Family is more likely to survive and do well when there's time together, when there's caring and appreciation, when there's communication, good, bad, or otherwise. You have to talk. Take time to sit at a table and eat and find out what's going on. Parents often make the mistake of being the talker and not often being the listener. As a human service worker, you have a unique opportunity to help people understand, adults particularly understand how important it is to listen to young people. They need to be heard. We can't always judge young people's decisions by our experiences as adolescents, although it should help us be a little bit more sensitive because we know how difficult it was when we were adolescents. We need to listen to their stories. We need to hear what's going on at their schools, what's going on with their friends, the decisions their friends are making, or the problems that they're having negotiating friendships. Those become very, very important. Extended family, friends, relationships that are healthy. You got to be really careful these days who you allow around your children. But make sure that you are engaged in your children's lives. One of the things I often recommend, I'm in private practice and I do a lot of family counseling, and I often recommend for parents, if you want to know what your child is doing, create an environment where they will bring their friends to your house. Be the house that the friends want to hang around, and you listen. My mom did a really interesting thing when I was a teenager. She converted our garage to a den. Smart lady. What I didn't realize that she had done is the den is right next to the living room. The couch sits right on the wall between the den and the living room. And what my mother would do is whenever I had friends over, or I had company, quote unquote, she'd sit right there in that couch. The walls were thin. She could hear everything that was going on. She was present. And I often encourage parents, be present. Be the household that your children want to bring their friends over to, and then pay attention to their conversations. Don't let them stay locked up in a room. Have activities open in the living room. Don't be so busy looking at your football game or your soap operas or your HGTV, which I love, that you're not cognizant of what's going on with your children. Those become really important. Now, this is not a counseling session, but it's important how all of these come together and they tie in. So, what families might say, I love this slide by Arnett. And I gave you some examples. I want you to see, did you get it right? Authoritarian says, do it my way because I said so. There is no room for negotiation. It is the parent's way, and there is no space or grace. This is often an abusive, either emotionally or physically abusive household. Let's go to disengaged. Adolescent, mom, are you home? Mom, no answer. Adolescent, I guess I make my own dinner again. Mom may be there, but she's not present. She may be physically there, but she's emotionally somewhere else, just absent. What about this is permissive? Sure, you can have a party in the house while we're away. The key to the liquor cabinet is in your father's sock drawer. How about the key to the gun cabinet or safe? Permissive. Sometimes you can be permissive and disengaged, and that creates a real hectic environment. You'll see that when you look at the film, The Indefinite Defeat of Mr. and Pete. Inevitable Defeat, I think it's called. You'll see a combination of a disengaged, permissive parent who just is not present. Finally is the authoritative parent. No, you can't go to the mall today. We made plans to visit your aunt in the hospital. How about we drop you off at your friend's house on the way home? Good enough compromise? This parent will set some parameters, some boundaries, will always allow room for negotiation and discussion. At the end of the day, that parent makes the decision, but the child feels empowered, the adolescent feels empowered to communicate. Well, I'm not going to belabor what you're going to read about. I just wanted to pique your interest. I look forward to your response to your activity for this week. Have a great week.